We have an interesting one this time. This is really focuses on social engineering and a common denominator. So we have large companies being affected by their use of Salesforce. Salesforce is not the bad guy, but the common denominator is that the victims are using Salesforce, and there is a social engineering phishing attack that occurs. And Google has recently announced that they have also been a victim of this phishing attack. So first we're going to go over some credits. Bleeping Computer, one of my favorite sites. I read most of those articles for this particular presentation, and I also accessed some information about Qantas data breach complaints because they are also a victim of this phishing attack and the social engineering tactics, and their customers are not very happy. Some other credits that you might want to know about is I do use Google Slides. I use Generate Images in Google Slides, which is Imagen, to create the main title slides just for pleasant images. I use Notebook LM to compose and store all the sources into one place. It's actually a very good tool for that. I also use the audio overview and now the video overview to learn about the articles after I read them, to make sure that I understand what is going on, and so I can provide a better presentation. I also use Rabbit R1, which is a nice device. I use it to record my audio, which I'm doing right now. I also use it for asking for clarification on terms and definitions and acronyms, usually when I do these reviews. So it's actually a very good tool. Thank you, Rabbit R1 and Google. So the short story is Google confirmed a data breach in June 2025 affecting one of the corporate Salesforce CRM instances. So this is an ongoing set of data theft attacks that are targeting companies that use Salesforce CRM. Now, Salesforce is not the bad guy. They are indicating that there are no vulnerabilities. They are indicating that all these attacks are performed using social engineering through voice phishing, which is vishing. Then they are only the common denominator. The victims that are affected by social engineering are using Salesforce. And then Shiny Hunters is the extortion group that is being tracked by Google for this. And the tracking for these two is UNC 6040 and UNC 6240. So the larger summary, again, is that Google announced they're a victim of the ongoing attacks that are being affected by Salesforce CRM users. And again, they are attributing it to Shiny Hunters, as well as a few other groups are doing that. Google tracks UNC 6040 as the infiltration group, and they are attributing UNC 6240 as the extortion group. So these attacks do involve voice phishing, which is vishing, and basically what happens is people are actually using phones. They're talking to an employee. They schmooze them. They trick them into installing malicious software. In this case, it is Salesforce Data Loader. And then once this is done, the hackers have access to get in. And some of the companies that have been impacted by this include Google, Qantas, which is a unique situation, Adidas, Alliance Life, and LVMH, and their subsidiaries, Louis Vuitton, and so forth. So Qantas, the reason why Qantas is an interesting one is because they are suffering a class action lawsuit because of this. And I think what's going on is it is being alleged that they have failed to protect customer information because they are trying to save money, and so they have offshored quite a bit of their operations, including the call center operations, and this has created a situation where the skill set and the resources are not as good, and that created their scenario and situation. So some of the terms and acronyms that we have come across while we were doing this include CRM, which is Customer Relationship Management. This is basically a system that allows companies to store data about their customers, and then so they can access it. This tells you some of the basic information, points of contact, so it's names, company names, customers, the employee names, phone numbers, addresses, maybe what they buy, and probably some personal information about their preferences and stuff like that. Voice phishing is called Vishing, and again, this is just a social engineering technique. And as you learn more and more about cybersecurity, you'll realize that this is probably the biggest weakness, but it's also one of the hardest things to fix. And so basically what happens is an employee gets tricked and they divulge enough information or they click on something that compromises the security of whatever they are using or what their company uses. Data exfiltration is the unauthorized transfer or removal of data from a computer system or network. OAuth is open authorization. This is an open standard for access delegation, and basically it's used for people who are on the internet. They can grant websites or applications access to their information on other websites without giving them their passwords. Qantas, we just mentioned them. They are Australia's largest airline. They're the victim of the phishing attacks that have been affected by Salesforce users, that's affecting Salesforce users or companies. The twist on this one, though, is that there's a class action lawsuit, and it's regarding the offshoring of manpower and how that may have affected the risk of being attacked and hacked. An extortion group is an organized group of cyber criminals that primarily engage in data theft and then demand a ransom payment from the victims to prevent public disclosure or sale of the stolen data. CRM, we already mentioned this before, it's a customer relationship management system that is hosted and managed by an external vendor. In this case, it's Salesforce, and it's delivered over the internet as a service, so it's usually web or cloud-based. Vulnerability is a weakness or a flaw in a system, application, or process that can be exploited by a threat. So the vulnerability in this situation are the employees. Here's some acronyms. So CRM, we already talked about that, Customer Relationship Management. GTIG is Google's Threat Intelligence Group. MFA is Multi-Factor Authentication. OAIC is the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. OAuth, we talked about that, is the open authorization. This is the open standard for delegation. TTPs, so this is tactics, techniques, and procedures. And so this is used to describe the threat actor behavior. UNC 6040, UNC 6240 is Google's classifications for the threat actors involved in these Salesforce attacks. VPN, virtual private network, used by the attackers to kind of hide their location a little bit. Vishing is voice phishing, which is social engineering. So what are some of the mitigations? We actually broke the mitigations into a couple categories this time. And so we'll start with what does Salesforce recommend? And this is what they're recommending to their customers. They're asking or encouraging to enforce trusted IP ranges for logins, limit app installation authorization, so principle of least privilege, enable multi-factor authentication, restrict the use of connected apps and manage access policies, utilize Salesforce Shield for advanced threat detection, event monitoring, and transaction policies, and add a designated security contact for incident communication. Google's recommendations include restrict API-enabled permissions, limit app installation authorization, and block access from commercial VPNs like Molvad. So some of the general best practices and lessons from Qantas incident: enhance employee cybersecurity awareness and best practices to counter the social engineering, carefully manage third-party integrations and outsourced operations, ensuring rigorous training and security checking for staff, and scrutinize permissions for call center platforms, ensuring they cannot export sensitive data without restrictions, maybe even at all. So Salesforce recommendations we already talked about. Incident reporting. Here are some contact sites that you can use. So in the United States, you can contact the FBI if this happens to you. CISA is a good resource. NSA is a good resource. And since this happened in Australia, you can visit cyber.gov.au or call the 1-300-CYBER-1 to report cyber incidents. There are Canadian organizations where you can report to, and of course New Zealand. Contact information here as well. And again, the credits, these are the same credits you saw at the beginning, so thank you to Bleeping Computer. And please go do a quick search for the Qantas data breach to learn more about that and form your own opinions. And I think that is it. So thank you, everybody, for joining me. Hope you have a great day. See you later. Bye-bye.